Don't buy because you want things, buy because you need things.
You gotta live below your means. You gotta make sacrifices.
The easiest way to invest is just like he said, in something that you like.
Vanessa, thanks for being here today. Thanks for being on the podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Excited today to talk about this amazing book. This is definitely one of my favorite books when it comes to finances. I believe that most books that on self-help, on finances, to be honest with you, can relate to this book in some way or another. I believe that most authors that want to teach some way in some form of finance have read this book. It is an incredible book. It is the book, The Richest Man in Babylon. Highly recommended. Vanessa, you have been reading this book and just got done reading it. Love to know what you got out of the book, what stood out. How has this book impacted your life?
I read this book a couple of times throughout my life. What first kind of attracted me to the book was how short it was. And as I read it, it was simple to the point. So the book just teaches you 4 principles on how to achieve financial wealth. The first one is save 10% of what you make. So whatever money you bring from either your work, paycheck, whatever, save 10%.
But there was a really interesting story about this when I was reading the book about the guy saying, hey, so he brings a group of people into the crowd and he's preaching about how to create wealth. And one of the guys says, how are we supposed to save 10% of our money when we're living paycheck to paycheck? We're barely making ends meet. And the guy says, hey, well, what does everybody do here? He says, well, I'm a carpenter. He says, I'm a mason, and I am, I work with cattle and farming, agriculture. So in the group, different people had different trades. And he says, hey, you guys all do something different. You guys all make different incomes. And yet you guys are all broke. And everybody kind of stood there and looking at each other. He's like, well, that's a good point. What do you mean by this? He's like, well, the only difference is that you guys are just living above your means. In order to do what he said is to save 10% and invest, you got to live below your means. You got to make sacrifices. And there's nobody that and with the exception of somebody maybe getting an inheritance, but that got to be financially free in their life without making sacrifices.
Right. So that is the second principle. So the first principle is to save 10%. And you cannot do that unless you do the second principle, which is live within your means. Don't buy because you want things, buy because you need things. And then the third principle would be to invest your money wisely. So, when you talk to people as far as like, hey, how do you invest your money? You want to go to a professional, you want to go to a financial advisor, or you want to diversify and you just want to invest your money because you want to make money for you, and that's how you build your wealth.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I struggled with growing up because we were really never taught a lot of these principles and being able to invest your money. So I always thought, well, I'm really good at saving my money, which is a quality that I always had since a young kid. But I was like, I don't really know how to invest. So my recommendation, and take this for what it's worth, is to make sure that you invest into something that you believe in. And whether it's the stock market and a certain company that you believe in, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, if you believe in them, but you invest your money in something. Real estate is definitely a good one, expensive one. But if you don't have a lot, you can start off small. There are companies on the stock market that you can invest to slowly, think long term, and slowly but surely. And he talks about a story of the guy going to work and he saves 10% over a whole year, and he invested into one of his friends into like a glass company or something, right? And the guy's like, why would you do that? This guy knows nothing about this business. And he ends up losing a whole year's worth of savings because he invested into the wrong people. And it's very important that when you invest into a company that you understand you're investing into the person. You're investing into the owner, to the CEO of that business. You're not investing into that business. Invest into people. And he talks about that in the book. And it was to me, it brought a lot of value, but it was something that I struggled with, was understanding how to invest your money. And until recently, I've been able to explore different options, and I definitely recommend you guys do your homework on it. I'm not a financial advisor. do, do not go say Gus said to do this, but I definitely recommend things like real estate, things like the stock market, things like cryptocurrencies. Those are all great ways to invest your money, and to just make sure that you're investing into things that you believe in.
Yeah, so that's the last principle is to keep learning. So keep learning how to invest, keep learning how to who to trust with your money. Keep learning about companies and like you said, like, hey, don't take your word for it. Go do your own research. And but it's the easiest way to invest is just like he said, in something that you like because that's what attracts you. That product company and you find yourself reading more about that. So yeah, that's a good advice.
Yeah, great book. I really, really enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. Is there something in this book, Vanessa, that you've been able to, something specific in this book that you've been able to apply to your life that's been very helpful?
So as I was reading this book, it just growing up, I had an uncle. His name was Uncle Johnny. And Uncle Johnny worked at a factory and he did really well for himself. But growing up, I didn't really understand how he did well for himself. I just thought, hey, he had a good job and, he made money. But as I'm reading this book, I realized that he kind of followed the same steps where he had a good job, but he was also very humble. Like he would I think he owned like 5 pairs of shirts and 2 pairs of pants, extremely humble, and he was always investing his money. Every time he would get paid, he would always invest his money. So I think th- why that stood out to me is because as I was becoming an adult and just going into our financial life and earning wealth and all that, I realized that, hey, I just need to follow that same advice because I see it personally that it helped my uncle become such a successful, wealthy man today. So I saw it firsthand that it does work. And I feel like we've been able to follow that in our lives. So, like we're
Yeah,
humble.
me and you, as we built up our businesses and being able to start. I mean, our first apartment was probably no bigger than the studio, and just starting off. I mean, with living within your means was the big thing. Is making sure that you are living within your means, and whatever's left over, you're investing, and understanding that you're thinking long term. This
Yes.
is not a short term solution; it's a long term solution. You're thinking in years. You're thinking in decades, and this is how you create generational wealth.
Yep.
And like you were saying, your uncle Johnny was able to establish it, and me and you through our lives have been able to build up similar and through the similar principles that you just talked about, right? And so this book talks about a lot about it, gives you really good insight, really good stories. Richest Man in Babylon, I highly recommend it. Please, even the comments, if you guys have read this book, something to sit out and change your guys' life and any value that it brought. And want to thank you today for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for listening. Please follow, subscribe. We got more books coming your guys' way, but definitely check this one out. This is one of my favorites, Richest Man in Babylon. And we'll see you guys on the next one.